Okay, the title of this talk will be Epigenetics, Leaving Evolutionists Dumbfounded. And epigenetics is kind of a recent discovery, and it's very, very interesting. And it's a problem for evolutionists, and so they don't spread it around very much, and not people know about it. And some people I ask about it, and they'll say, "Oh, a biologist says it's all about mutations." Well, I know their mutations are very important to them, but it's not about mutations. So try to watch my presentation, and maybe you'll learn a little bit. I'm not going to go real deep, just try to give you an overview. This is a quote I found interesting from Nature magazine on January 22. We conclude that epigenetic mutational bias challenges the prevailing paradigm that mutations is a directionless force in evolution. Our discovery yields a new account of the forces driving patterns of natural variations, challenging a long-standing paradigm regarding the randomness of mutations. They think everything changes. The reason things change is just because these random mutations. When you get a good one, then it's going to make it an advantage in some area, and then it'll have survival of the fittest, and then it'll have another change in the area, and eventually dinosaur will turn into a bird. Well, that's a real problem, and because of this recent science. And I'm going to talk to you about it so you don't fall into the lie about random mutations. The problem is science today is locked into paradigms. Every avenue is blocked by beliefs that are wrong, and if you try to get anything published by a journal today, you'll run up against a paradigm and the editors will turn it down. That's from Sir Fred Hoyle, and that's the problem. With this type of thing, you get a new discovery, you have to get it out there, and the best way to do it is in peer-reviewed journals, but they won't let you put this new stuff that goes against existing paradigms, and that's what happens. That's what Nature's magazine's talking about, and a few people are getting it out there, but then it's not getting to our textbooks or anything like that. Here's a little joke. We teach you how to think critically. We teach you how to examine evidence. Accept evolution. We will teach you what to think, and don't ask any embarrassing questions. So they're not open to changes, but there's some big changes happening in science. So epigenetics is a study of how your environment and behavior can cause changes that affect the way your genes work without altering the underlying DNA sequences. The term means on top of, epi means on top of, or in addition to, genetics, and explains why genetically identical organisms can develop different traits and characteristics like identical twins. Sometimes if they're in different environments, they're going to have different traits. If they're in the same environment, they're going to have similar traits. The majority of evolutionary biologists never predicted such a complex layer of outside information controlling DNA code to regulate how organisms respond to environmental cues such as temperature, light, and food. This finding confuses the very muddy narrative of neo-Darwinian evolution. And neo-Darwinian evolution is when they switched from pangenesis to mutations, and it's got big problems, but nobody dares talk about it. Epigenetics are found in humans, animals, birds, and plants. They're in everything. It's this great regulatory thing, and it says on top of it's actually outside the DNA, and it can turn on and change the frequency and of the DNA and it does a lot, but it has to do it just right to make the changes needed to respond to the environmental cues. Epigenetics versus genetics. Genetics refers to genes you inherit, which are made of DNA. Your genetic code is a fixed blueprint for building and maintaining your body. Epigenetics describes the modifications and dimmer switches that control how and when your genes are expressed. It determines how your body reads the genetic blueprint, but does not change the blueprint itself. So it doesn't change the genes, and we'll talk about it. It changes like in cells where you're going to be a blood cell, you're going to be a skin cell, you're going to be a brain cell. They all have the same DNA, but they just have different dimmer switches on and off, and it's set up just perfect for that cell to become the right kind of cell for that part of the body. Cell differentiation. Every cell in your body has the same DNA, but epigenetics processes determine a cell's specialized function. For instance, epigenetic dictates whether a cell becomes a nerve cell or a muscle cell by activating and silencing different sets of genes. So basically what I just said, and it's all handled by epigenetics. It's not like they're made different. They're made the same. Factors that can cause epigenetic changes. Environmental and lifestyle, a person's diet, exposure to pollution, cigarette smoke, and stress can influence the epigenome. And a lot of things you get involved in can change your epigenetics. Development, epigenetic modifications can begin before birth and are sensitive during fetal development. And this is interesting. And they're there when the first cell starts. And then they're assigned to a different cell somehow and change that cell into a different type of cell, and it's there right at the beginning. And how did it get there in the beginning? It doesn't make sense. And how did it get there on top of the DNA? Did it evolve up there by mutations? I don't think so. Trauma and experience like trauma or stress, particularly in childhood, can lead to epigenetic changes. Chemicals, exposure to certain chemicals like plastic, components, or heavy metals can also alter the epigenome. Exercise and stress, your lifestyle, and psychological stress levels can alter your epigenome. Mental health. Some studies have found epigenetic differences in individuals with depression and schizophrenia. Early life trauma and stress may also cause lasting epidemic changes that affect mental health. Health conditions. They are also involved in other conditions, including birth defects, behavior issues like related to the brain, such as post-traumatic stress disorder, and some people don't ever get rid of it. But epigenetic changes can go away. And what you do is get away from the bad things. If you have PTSD, you're going to relive it about 1,000,000 times, but you're going to have to find a way to try to get that out of your thinking system. Future development. Research in epigenetics seek to develop new drugs that target how DNA is stored and used to potentially treat or restore health. And I think that'd be great if that's something could do, but I don't think they're going to be able to do it, but hope they do. Understanding random mutations. Random mutations are alterations in the DNA sequence that occur randomly during various cellular processes such as DNA replication, repair, and recombination. These mutations can range from a single nucleotide change to large-scale chromosomal rearrangements. While some mutations might be neutral, many can lead to determinant effects, including disease like cancer. So DNA actually, when it's being formed, RNA will stop spinning at 100,000 RPM and do it in less than a quarter of a turn and go back and fix it. After they're done, the molecular machines that are inside the cell, there's 300 different types. There are 3 types that go and check and fix any mutations that have made it by. And also, epigenome will check for mutations and fix the mutations. So mutations have to go through a lot, and your body's got to be kind of screwed up in order for those mutations to go into something like cancer. Inheritance is more complex than previously thought. In addition to genes, other factors such as epigenetic marks and cultural practices can also be passed down through generations. As scientists continue to improve their techniques for analyzing DNA, they are discovering that many differences once attributed to genetic mutations are really outside DNA, and the DNA hasn't changed at all. This includes classics of evolution such as Darwin's finches and Neanderthals. So they see, oh, hey, this big change was caused by mutations. It must be by mutations. No, it's epigenetics. And Darwin's finches were the great evidence that he found and validated that we evolved from molecules. And it's not by mutations, it's by these great epigenetics that we have in each one of our bodies. One of the problems with studying epigenetics is dealing with its overwhelmingly complexity. The genetic code comprises the ordered sequence of nucleotide letters A, C, T, G, but histone code has 100 different letters, chemical tags, in its alphabet. The genetic code for DNA itself was thought to be much simpler. Only a major modification seems to be whether a methane group was attached to a cysteine. However, this new discovery indicates that many more DNA modifications exist in humans, mice, and other vertebrates than previously believed. So it has all these letters, chemical tags, 100 different types in there, and how do they all come together? Maybe the 4 could possibly come together. It's impossible that DNA could come together. Now with the 100 of different letters and thousands of them in the epigenomes, it's just not going to come together and be able to have this mind to make these changes. And it makes changes not in one cell, it makes changes in all these cells in the beak, for example. So they'll all change. And it's amazing, amazing subject. Beneficial mutations, epigenetics, an exciting field of science, displays the intelligence and providence of God to help organisms adapt and survive in fallen world, which helps explain beneficial mutations. There are no real beneficial mutations. If you look at all the good ones, they say it's a way to kind of adapt. And it's called, all adaptations are caused by epigenetics. And they think, well, okay, he's better, he's going to survive. This is going to lead to something big if you add them all up together. Well, it just doesn't happen. And epigenetics just will change so much and will not change any farther. And then it will change back, but it will not go changing a dinosaur to a bird. Many claim that beneficial mutations provide examples of evolution in action. These mutations create results in the formation of major innovations and rare, complex traits that over time result in evolution of all things from a common ancestor. However, analysis of these mutations show they only result in variations in pre-existing traits that organisms already possess, and cannot result in the origin of novel traits necessary for molecules to man evolution. So these mutations aren't the power behind evolution, and this proves this wrong. That paradigm is proven wrong. Since there's no genetic change involved, there's no loss or gain of information, but despite the hopes of evolutionists that this epigenetic form of inheritable change could be an agent of evolution, epigenetic change also does not result in the acquisition of new information. Existing genes are simply switched on or off. Therefore, epigenetic change is instead a reversible method of adaptation leading to temporary variation within a kind of an organism. It doesn't create new kinds or anything like that. Until these findings, many evolutionists dismiss the idea of Charles Darwin's contemporary Jean-Baptiste Lamarck, who believed that animals could acquire new traits through interactions with their environment and then pass them on to the next generations. Many science textbooks today reject Lamarck's idea, but epigenetics is a form of Lamarckianism. Actually, Charles Darwin took Lamarck's ideas and put it into his book, and he called it pangenesis. He had a chapter on pangenesis, and it was basically Lamarckianism. And the thing of it is, Lamarck wasn't an evolutionist. He doesn't think we came from the molecules. He just saw it within the different kinds changing, and he was right. Now we know he was right, and Darwin was wrong. These non-random epidemic changes imply that evolution has a mind. A mind? Where does mind come from? It comes from an intelligent greater mind. Creatures appear to have complex mechanisms to make epigenetic changes that allow them to adapt to future environmental changes. But where did this forward-thinking design come from? Evolution is mindless. It cannot see the future. So how did it evolve mechanisms to prepare for the future? This is a big problem. These type of changes are much more valuable than random mutations and natural selections because they can produce immediate benefits for offsprings without harming the basic information in the actual sequence of DNA. So we got to the conclusion now. God likely designed the organisms. He's the mind behind it with epigenetic mechanism to allow them to change easily and quickly in their relation to their environment. Although we often hear that nothing in biology makes sense except in the light of evolution, it should be said that nothing in biology makes sense without the Creator God. Epigenetics is an exciting field of science that displays the intelligence and providence of God to help organisms adapt and survive in a fallen world. But evolutionists think that is impossible, that is fairy tales. But that's the truth. These epigenetics, they point to a creator God. Actually, DNA points to a creator God, and they wrote that off. Now they're not talking about this because I don't think they could write it off.